everybody, as promised, our second ever Sci-Fi Friday review on Saturday. Reviewing Defiance, Killjoys, and Dark Matter. Now, if you're not totally caught up on those three shows, you're going to want to skip this video and come back later, because everything we talk about from this point forward is going to be a spoiler. Okay, starting with Defiance, Season 3, Episode 3, titled Dead Air. And the title is very apt, because the show leads off with the St. Louis Arch exploding.
And for us, this episode was kind of lackluster. It wasn't, I don't know, it's like the weakest episode of the entire series. And I don't know if it was, you know, the first thing we get was the explosion of the arch, and the CG was really bad. And I don't know if maybe that just pulled us out of the moment and we weren't able to get back into it after that. Right. I personally, if you don't want to spend the money on the CG, I would have rather not seen the explosion and instead see all the people reacting to the explosion, and then the arch is gone in the next frame.
Yeah. And the whole, like she said, you know, maybe we just couldn't recover from that, because it was very jarring how low quality it was. It was very Sharknado as far as the quality of that effect.
It was really bad.
It was. And just the story overall of the episode did not really live up to the standard of previous episodes of this show. Case in point, you know, Nolan and Amanda, they go out to recover some weapons, because the weapons cache of at Defiance has been just decimated by these insects that eat weapons. And they fail, so that story literally does not move.
They went out to get weapons, but they weren't able to get the weapons. So, like, basically nothing happened in that story. And they used that storyline to bring Niles back, which, why would you bring Niles back? He wasn't...
He's an awful character.
Yeah, he was written in a way that he didn't have to come back.
Yeah.
But they bring him back, and apparently he was an obsessive stalker of Amanda's ex-fiance, and then kind of transferred that to Amanda.
Yeah. And
it just brings back the rape that happened when she was in New York.
New York, yeah.
Yeah, when she was in New York. And I was never really happy with that story, because I feel like it's sloppy and lazy when you've got a lead female character and you're like, well, how can we give her some more character and development and give her a story? And so they have, oh, well, she was raped in her past. Really? You couldn't do something better than that? It's kind of almost cliche.
It's at this point, yes, that is absolutely cliche.
So I'm not really happy with that storyline anyway. And then they bring it back, and she thinks Niles is the rapist. He says that he watched it happen to her and couldn't do anything because how could he explain why he was there? But that it was okay because he followed the guy later, beat him to death, and threw him in a river. Now, I personally think Niles was telling the truth and that he is not the rapist, because I don't think they're done with that storyline. I think it's going to come back later. But I do think he was lying about beating and killing the rapist and dumping him into a river. I think he just watched it and was a coward, and he needed to cover for that, so he made up that.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. Yeah. As weak overall as we really thought this episode was, it did have one really interesting scene, and that is Stahma with Tefkin after they've had coitus and they're having breakfast the next morning. And it was such a great scene, because Stahma went there to assassinate Tefkin, during their lovemaking. And she stuck him with the needle. She tried to poison him, but it didn't work. And he totally calls her out on it the next morning. And they have actually a great conversation. It was a fantastic scene in an otherwise very weak episode.
Yeah, my favorite story development was their story.
Yeah.
I am so excited to see what they do with those two characters.
Absolutely.
Because they've just got a great chemistry on set, and they just play well with each other. Stahma's very, very smart, and I think he might be a challenge to her, whereas her husband's kind of not anymore.
Just as a viewer, I think Stahma's relationship with Tefkin is already more interesting than her relationship with Datak.
Yeah, I agree. Another interesting storyline that we got was the headaches that Nolan and Irisa are experiencing. Now, I'm not necessarily convinced that they're due to the little umbilical cord thing that was attached to their forehead when they were in the stasis chambers. I think that's a convenient excuse, but when they were pulled out of those, the Olmecs were there. So I'm almost wondering, did the Olmecs do something to them?
And I'm inclined to agree with that, because if it was just Nolan getting the headaches and having these symptoms, it would make total sense because he's human and this is a VC technology. But the fact that it's happening to Irisa too just doesn't make sense. So I think this does link back to the Olmecs.
Yeah. And with these headaches, at the very end, Irisa falls into like a seizure, and Berlin kind of walks around the corner, sees her, and then turns around and walks away. I don't think she's just leaving her there. I think she wants to just leave her there, but I think her conscience is going to get the better of her, and she will end up going and getting the doctor. I don't think she's going to leave her there. She might. She just doesn't seem like she's as cold-hearted of a bitch as she wants Irisa to believe right now.
Right. And speaking of the doctor, I don't think she's going to live through this season, because when Nolan and Amanda are on their mission to bring back these weapons, they encounter and bring with them a former veterinarian who has basically become like a field medic kind of a thing for Niles, and they take him back, or they're bringing him back with them. So I think that character has been written in to replace the doctor, because she's been treated like shit this entire season so far.
With the Olmecs, with their arrival, her species was created for spare parts for the Olmecs. That was their function as a species. So, to the Olmecs, she is nothing more than a skin graft in a petri dish. And just so many terrible things has already happened to her that this season, that I agree. I think she's done for. I think she's going to die at the end of the season. If she doesn't die, I think she's going to leave.
I think that's it for Defiance. If we missed anything, let us know in the comments. Moving on to Killjoys Season 1, Episode 2, Sugar Point Run. Now, this one didn't quite live up to the pilot last week, but it was still a very good episode.
Yeah. Killjoys is absolutely amazing in that their pilot was phenomenal. That rarely happens. Normally, a pilot episode gets your attention, but it's mostly an introduction to all the characters, and it's not a phenomenal episode. And theirs was. So it's not really against them that the second episode wasn't as good, because the first episode was just so good, it was almost impossible.
Pilots tend to fall into this trap of just being basically an information dump. And Killjoys was able to do that while keeping it action-packed and character-driven, which was really, really nice. And in this episode, we do get another character-driven story.
Yes.
Because Davin and Dutch have to learn to trust each other. Because right now, Davin, they've kind of welcomed him aboard their ship, but he's really not welcome.
Yeah, Dutch has been hinting.
They're like, well, you can stay on our ship, but you got to get a job and get your papers and get the fuck off the ship.
Yeah.
So they're sending him mixed signals. So he's got to develop a relationship, of some kind with Dutch, just to, have a place to live. Because right now he can't go anywhere because he doesn't have the papers.
Yeah. And in this episode, they're given a warrant, which is actually a person that they are exchanging for another person, the mayor's daughter. And when they go to exchange the warrant, their ship is shot down. And so Dutch and Davin are forced to work together, and Johnny has to stay behind and fix the ship. And what was really great is, one, it gave a little bit of character development between Dutch and Davin, and at the same time, it kind of made Johnny an important character, because, a lot of times in stories, one, when you split up the characters and there's one by themselves, their story is really weak, and his wasn't. His was very strong.
And that could be because the ship talks to him, so they have this rapport. So that could have made his story a little stronger, just by the fact that he wasn't completely, by himself, Tom Hanks and Castaway style.
Yeah. And the other pitfall is when you have two characters who are such badasses like Davin and Dutch, physically intimidating, strong characters, the other person almost feels like the puppy dog that they allow to
Yeah.
come along with them because
And-
they feel bad for him.
And the fact that Johnny was able to hold his own in basically a Kobayashi Maru scenario, you know, the no-win situation, and he came out of it with flying colors and actually saved the day. It made Johnny
A valuable member.
an equal in this group, and it would have been very easy for, in the viewer's eyes, for him to slide down in the pecking order. You know, as the series began, Johnny was an established partner of Dutch, but Davin is such a powerful person that Johnny, you know, as far as the viewer is concerned, Johnny could have been relegated to the sideline, and this episode really had to, you know, emphasize his character and his traits and his strengths, and let us as the viewer know that, okay, Johnny is just as important in the show and in the scheme of things as these other two characters.
And speaking of the other two characters, Davin and Dutch don't really see eye to eye, and they don't really trust each other. And, you know, Dutch is really, really good at close quarters combat. She's good with the hand-to-hand, you know, one-on-one, or, you know, three-on-one, because she's a badass. That is her strength, is dealing with that. And Davin is a stand back, see the full picture kind of guy.
Very strategic, very methodical. He goes into a building, he sees all the exits, he knows all the possible, you know, ambush points, and he sees the big picture that Dutch doesn't.
Yeah, and it just lends them to work beautifully together.
Yeah.
Like, she's the expertise when it's one-on-one, close quarters. He's expertise when they're in the big giant building. And, you know, she does end up having to trust him because he's basically like, look, we're not going to get out of this alive if you don't trust me. And she has to really trust him because, like, he throws, like, a flash grenade, and she's blind and just follows his instructions.
Mm-hmm. Now, this scene was a really neat scene because, you know, she's been blinded by this flash grenade, so she's doing exactly what he tells her to do. He's like, you know, go here, go there, whatever. But there's one thing about this scene that actually annoyed me, and that's, I think it's the first person he kills in this scene. He does this cheesy line. Oh, I can't remember exactly what it was, but like he throws this guy over the rail and he's like, over you go. And I'm like, oh, come on, no, don't do that. But then after that, it's fine.
Yeah, and it's just, that's not really his character.
No,
or at
it's
least
not.
It just doesn't seem like it's his character.
It was a little too lighthearted for his character, and it actually took me out of that moment. But unlike Defiance, the previous show, I was able to get right back into it.
Another thing that's absolutely amazing in this scene is that Dutch is getting the hostage out of there, following his instructions, but she's blind. She memorized the floor plan and does all of this while blind.
And Davin actually mentions, he's like, you memorized the entire floor plan, didn't you? And she's like, yep. Like, totally just like, yeah, I did. That's what I do every time I enter a building. Don't you?
Yeah. So that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And it's just, I absolutely love Dutch. I do get the sense, though, that Dutch and Davin are going to develop a romantic relationship, and I hope it doesn't go that direction.
Me too.
Because it's too obvious.
Yeah, it's really obvious, and it's kind of cliche.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather Dutch develop a relationship with Johnny, but they've hinted that they've been on the ship together for quite some time. If a relationship was going to happen, it would have happened already, so I almost think that they're more brother-sister type relationship than anything. I'd really, you know, a relationship is unnecessary. None of them need one.
Right.
Just focus on the action.
If they do want to bring in a love interest, I think it should be somebody from the outside. I don't think it should be in the group. I think that is going to damage the dynamic that we have so far.
Yes. Now, Dutch, at the end of last episode, received a red box. And inside the red box is a weapon and a name, and she has to kill that person. And they go into that a little bit in this episode with flashbacks and stuff. In fact, your favorite scene.
Yes. At one point, when Dutch and Davin are, you know, trying to deliver their warrant, they actually get captured, and they're strapped to these gurneys. And, you know, it does like a back and forth, like flashback, present day, to where Dutch, in the flashback, she's strapped to a chair, and she has to like dislocate her shoulder and her wrist, and the entire right side of her body. She has to dislocate to get out of this chair and to kill this man who's across from her, who is also strapped to a chair and trying to get out of the chair to kill her. It's part of her training. And that's the flashback. And in the present day, they're strapped to this gurney, and she dislocates her shoulder and does some crazy
back-arching snake slither,
double jointed back arch thing, and it was gross.
Yeah, it was gross, but
it was awesome.
Oh
my god, it was really, really cool. I am sold now that Dutch is the ultimate badass in this show.
Yes. And we do get a couple of flashbacks, but she has to deal with this red box, because with the flashbacks, they introduce that if she doesn't kill the person she's supposed to, then, there are consequences to that. And, during training, it was her and the other person strapped to a chair. The first one who gets a knife kills the other one, and that person gets to live. I imagine the consequences now are going to be a little bit more severe than that.
Yeah.
So she does go to this person, but she doesn't kill him. She stabs his hand into the wall and says, "Why do they want you dead?" I do think she's going to kill him because she doesn't want to die,
she
and
doesn't
that's
have a
the
choice.
consequence.
It's self-preservation, so she really has to.
Yeah.
But I think she's going to get the information she needs, and I'm excited, as the viewer, to find out what exactly is going on.
Yeah.
Because her former life, it seems like she was in a cult or some kind of religious sect or something, and I really hope they're not just simple assassins. Somebody wants somebody dead, they hire us, and we send somebody out to kill them. I hope it's not that simple. I want something a little more in-depth.
Yeah, I agree. I want something a little more in-depth. From all her flashbacks and stuff, I got the impression of an orphanage where they take in children, but the children don't have a say in this matter. They are trained to be assassins, or they are, let go. And that she doesn't have a choice in the matter. She has to kill these people. And they've made a big deal of saying you're not supposed to ask questions. You don't get to know why you're killing this person. So I want to know, why is she killing this person? And of course, so does she. So I'm excited to follow her journey on that.
And also at the end of the episode, they offer Davin, or actually Dutch offers Davin a spot on the ship as a Killjoy, so he can get his papers and be legal and be able to leave the ship and go out and drink and buy groceries and go to the movies or whatever he wants to do. And he accepts because he is on his own mission to find a doctor. And we don't find out what kind of doctor or why he wants to find this doctor, but we do find out, last episode, that Johnny and Davin's mom died. We don't know what from. Maybe it was a disease. Maybe Davin has that disease, and that's why he's searching for the doctor.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this is he talks to Dutch about it, but Johnny doesn't know anything about this.
Right.
And it's almost implied when he's telling Dutch, "Don't tell Johnny."
Yeah.
So that kind of furthers that he's got an illness that he needs this doctor for, and he doesn't want to worry Johnny about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it for Killjoys. Let's move on to Dark Matter, Season 1, Episode 3, titled Episode 3. And I love the naming conventions of Dark Matter's episodes.
Yes. This is why it's so fantastic. As they woke up from stasis, they named themselves in the order that they woke up. 1, 2, 3, and so. And so all of the episodes this season are Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3, and so on. And I just think it's absolutely brilliant. At the same time, it's being incredibly easy to do.
Yeah.
But it works so well for this
practically
episode.
Every video we do, we're like, practically every video we do, we're like, what was the name of that episode?
Yeah.
And then we have to cut that out, obviously. But for Dark Matter, that's not a problem.
No.
And it's awesome.
Yes.
Now, this episode begins with Five, who is the supposedly teenage girl. We don't really know her age, although she does remark later, we get a little hint at her age. She's going around the ship talking to each member of the crew, just trying to get them to interact with her in some way. She wants to play a game, just because she wants to get to know them and have some kind of human interaction.
Bored.
She's bored, and she wants to get to know the people that she's with,
Yeah.
Presumably. And they all shoot her down. So she decides to basically just go for a walk on the ship, and she passes this vent, and she feels this urge to climb in, and she ends up in another room and finds a dead teenage boy.
And what's so awesome about this is it totally reminded me of Alien. with the little girl crawling around in the air ducts in order to escape the alien. And like as soon as she's crawling in there, I'm like, it's like Alien! Had a little squeak moment.
And we don't know anything about this teenage boy. We know he's roughly, early teens, so 13, 14. And 5 mentions he's about the same age as me, so she's presumably in her early to mid-teens. But we know zero about this kid. What he's doing there, was he a stowaway? Was he a member of a crew that we just previously didn't know about? And we basically don't know anything about 5. We know that unlike the other members of the crew, she didn't lose all of her memories. She gained everybody's memories. So there's kind of a parallel between these two characters, but about just knowing nothing about them, basically. So I'm wondering what the relationship is between the two. Why was she attracted to this room? Are they siblings? Were they friends? Were they, boyfriend, girlfriend? I think there's some kind of connection between this dead boy and 5.
Yeah, I agree. It can't be a coincidence that there's 2 kids the same age that were on the ship. Mm-hmm. They have to be connected. And what's kind of interesting is she chooses the air duct to go to that room. And that makes me think, like, who on the ship traveled via the air ducts? Because she's been using them a lot. Mm-hmm. Is that one of her own memories, or is that somebody else's? Yeah. And I imagine she was attracted to go to the room because she subconsciously has the memory of shooting the kid from whoever shot him. Mm-hmm.
The other big question in this episode is what's behind the big door? Mm-hmm. And 3 decides to enlist 4 to kind of help him with this conundrum. And it's a really funny scene. I really like 4. He doesn't get a whole lot of dialogue, but just his scenes are some of my favorite scenes in the show so far. And 3 is trying to talk him into helping him open the door. And 4 kind of leads him on for a second. And it's just really funny because he's like, no. And just leaves. And 3's kind of just left, holding his dick. And
what I really like about the dynamic between 3 and 4 is that 3 just assumes that 4 is very much like him because 4 is very quiet and selfish. He is out for himself. He is number 1. He's going to take care of himself, and if other people get hurt in the process, well, they get hurt in the process. Yeah. And so 3 just automatically thinks that they are very similar and they're buddy-buddy. They're really not. 4 is just silent a lot.
And they do see eye to eye on some things, but not on other things. Yeah. I think 3 thinks they have way more in common than they actually do. Yeah. What's really interesting is each member of the crew, they're pairing off. 1 is pairing with 2, 3 is pairing with 4, 5 is pairing with 6. And out of all of them, the 5-6 friendship makes the most sense. And it's the one I enjoy the most as the viewer. 1 and 2 makes zero sense to me.
Makes 0 sense. Yeah, I agree.
And it looks like they're leading toward a romance with that, and that makes even less sense. Like, I can't imagine them being friends, let alone lovers.
Yeah. And it's interesting that they're pairing off in order. Yeah. It kind of suggests that their wake-up order was not random, and that there's a reason behind that wake-up order. Yeah. The only weird part about this episode was the android. The android goes out to fix a coupling, and basically as she's leaving says, oh, if I don't come back, I put an overwrite sequence in, just hit the S button, it'll walk you through it so that you guys can jump and get to the space station. And when she gets shocked when she's out there and she shuts down. And 1, 2, 5, and 6 all are adamant that they have to get the droid back on the ship. They have to go out and rescue her. And 1, totally get. 5, totally get. 6, okay, I can see that. But 2, totally out of character. She is extremely practical. And going out and rescuing the droid
and putting the rest of the crew and the ship at risk
was not practical.
That would not be a decision that 2 would make. She's too pragmatic. And so I didn't think that really lined up with what we know about that character so far.
Yeah, because she could have flown them to the space station, and they could have gotten another droid. It really wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
It's not, the droid was simply a computer. She wasn't, it's not like she had emotions or feelings or anything like that. She even said to, hey, if I don't come back, here's an override program. She had that, she wasn't upset with being left behind. It didn't make any sense. Now, that being said, I'm glad she didn't die, because the droid's one of my favorite characters.
I think the droid might be my favorite character, with 5 being a close second. I really can't stand 1. They could kill off 1 and I'd be fine.
2 is probably my favorite character, with the droid coming in second. But I think the reason why I like the droid so much is that she's hilarious, but she's not meaning to be hilarious. It's just because she's stating the obvious, or stating fact. And she reminds me a lot of Data from Star Trek, and Data was my favorite character on Star Trek. So I think that's why I have such a soft spot for the droid.
And she's unintentionally hilarious.
Yes.
The very last thing that happened in this episode, we find out that 1 has a doppelganger, and we don't really know what the deal is. We know that he says his name is Jace O'Connell or Jace Connor, Jace something with a C, and presumably he is the actual Jace. And 1 is some kind of imposter who stole his identity and then had his memory wiped. So he thinks his former life is this Jace guy, but not really.
That's our theory on it.
Yes.
We think that 1 is not actually Jace. It is either a twin or somebody who's had an identity changed.
Right. Some kind of facial transformation or whatever. But that seems to be the direction it's going to me, is the real Jace is going to intercept the ship, the Raza, and is going to basically fill them in on, well, not everything that's going on, because I think he's going to keep some things close to the vest. But, I think they're going to get more information, even though in this episode they did, actively decide to leave the mystery behind and not try to pursue any kind of knowledge of their former lives.
And this makes the most sense to us, because 1 doesn't fit in.
He doesn't.
They're supposed to be murderers and thieves, and they are hardened criminals, and he doesn't, I believe 5's a criminal more than I believe he is. He's too soft, he's too empathetic, he's too selfless. It just doesn't make sense for him to have the criminal record that they say he has. Mm-hmm. It makes much more sense that he's an imposter, and that this guy tracking them down is the real Jace. Also, 1 and 2 share a kiss, and 2 seems disappointed when he doesn't take it any further, when he cuts it off and says sorry. And I don't understand how 2 is attracted to 1, because their personalities are so completely different.
Yeah.
Unless it's a subconscious thing, and her and Jace were actually in a relationship, and so her subconscious is still attracted to him because it kind of remembers being in a relationship with him.
Yeah. That makes the most sense to me, because 1 and 2, in a relationship, it makes 0 sense. 2, if anybody, needs to be with 6. I think they make the best pairing, because I really like 6, and I think he's a cool guy. Okay, and I think that's pretty much it for the Dark Matter review. If we missed anything that you thought we should have talked about in any of the shows, Defiance, Killjoys, or Dark Matter, let us know in the comments. What did you think of the Season 3, Episode 3 of Defiance specifically? Because we were both really disappointed with it. Love to know what you guys thought. Let us know in the comments.
Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and on Fridays we do a Topic of the Week video, and we always need topics for that. So if you have a suggestion for the Topic of the Week video, put that down in the comments below, and we will choose the one we think we can make the best video for, and that's what we will post.
Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.